greater purpose businesses have a greater impact on the world around them, and they make greater profits. For 20 odd years, I was a business leader, owner, manager, etc. And I didn't believe that. I lived in a world which was very, very different. This is how it felt like. It was tiring, exhausting. I was constantly on the hamster wheel of chasing success. And this is a metaphor, this picture, because the guy is the business leader pushing the business. The car is a metaphor for the business, and the person who's actually driving the car without even looking could be a customer, a supplier, a team member. It could be anyone, and there's this thing of constantly having to motivate, and it's exhausting. It really is exhausting. Here's another picture which is almost as concerning as the previous one, and yeah, you can see the business leader is the guy on top who's not looking particularly happy, and his only tools to get people to do things is punish and reward. And as you can see, there's pound, dollar and euro signs around the carrot. So that's really how business works for so many people, and there's a complete lack of inspiration. This picture here is more about inspiration and what it feels like as a business leader, where you're in the driving seat, the engine, the structure of the business is working well, and there's plenty of fuel, i.e. inspiration in the tank. It doesn't mean you're not challenged as a business leader. In fact, it means you can take on bigger challenges. The default purpose of most businesses is something that's their intrinsic purpose. The intrinsic purpose of all businesses is to make a profit, maximize profit, and so it should be. However, it's not a greater purpose. And so a lot of businesses will have some sort of purpose and core values stated on their website, but they're just window dressing. They're not real, because you can tell when you go into the business. I can tell the values of a business and get a good feel for them just by spending some time in that business and observing it. It's the same with people. I've studied values for 20 years, and axiology is the study of values. And when you really get into it, the clues for real values are in behaviours. Now with a business, you can not only observe the behaviours of that business, you actually look at the KPIs, the key performance indicators that they measure. In business, you have to measure key performance indicators, and usually a clue to me that it's a business which is only got profit as its greater purpose is by looking at its key performance indicators. What's it actually measuring? Because there's a whole bunch of stuff around profit you have to measure and you should measure, but if it's not, in addition to that, measuring things that tell you about the humanity of the business, how inspired people are, how people feel, if you're not measuring those things adequately, that's an indication that the business is simply following its intrinsic purpose to make profit. It doesn't have a greater purpose. So if you're a greater purpose business, that's essential. Now, I can quote you a famous one that everyone will know straight away. SpaceX. SpaceX are a greater purpose business. You don't even have to know their purpose statement on their website. You don't need to know it, because you can tell from what they're doing. You don't even have to have been there and seen their staff wearing Occupy Mars t-shirts. You know there is a clear greater purpose. Regardless of whether you like the company or not, the people in the business are inspired by it. I know a guy who went there for an interview. He'd already been offered $250,000 a year at IBM, and he went to SpaceX, and they said, well, we'd love to offer you the job, but we can't match IBM. We can only give you $150,000 a year. This is a very clever guy, top scientist. And literally before the guy finished his sentence, he said, when do I start? And the reason he said that, and I spoke with him, he said because he'd been through the building, he'd seen the first thing that struck him, apart from what he knew about the business already, was there was a picture as he walked in of Mars in the night sky as we see it, and next to it a picture of a future Mars, green and blue, inhabited by people. He walked past people who had Occupy Mars written on their t-shirts, and he just got a vibe and a feel for the place, and he just felt compelled and inspired. And so he didn't care that they were offering him $100,000 a year less to go and work there. It didn't bother him. He just wanted to be there. He wanted to be involved in that project, in that business. That is how powerful inspiration is. That's why people will run through brick walls. They'll be more resilient. They'll think clearer. They'll have clearer priorities. And you can see another video I've done on this. They'll be way more creative. If you sign up for this complimentary video series, you'll see a video where I just look at the creativity, which is a massive thing. Because innovation, people talk about that all the time. Well, innovation is simply applied creativity. So the ability to be more creative is massive, and that happens mostly from when you're focused on a greater purpose. That's when you expand your potential to be more creative. Now, I'd like to share with you a story about how I got here, how I got this realization, because I, like so many people, for more than 20 years I'd been a business owner, manager and leader. I had bought into this idea that, very subconsciously, that it was all about motivating people. Okay. The challenge is that motivation is a very limiting force. It's like willpower. It's finite. You do need it in business. Even if you've got a greater purpose business, from time to time you're going to need to motivate people. But in a greater purpose business, the predominant energy is inspiration. And that's what makes it so different. And so few businesses are. Now, I have people, if I use the SpaceX example, which I just have, say, well, I'm not a rocket. I'm not putting rockets into space. I'm not, saving people's lives. Well, of the 104 businesses where I've gone through this process and this framework with, most of them are things like they work in the financial services, they're a chartered accountant, they are a manufacturer, they are an IT company, a services provider, a whole range of different companies. I'm going to share case studies, by the way, in my video series, where I can actually show kind of people who do regular things. I don't know, an interior commercial designer, these kind of companies where I've helped them to go through, elicit their core values, extrapolate what their greater purpose is from that, and it's really authentic. It resonates with people. It's owned by everyone in the business. They feel this total ownership. The way in which people randomly select values and put them on their website, I've got another video on that to show you why most core values and purposes and even visions stated on most companies' websites have a degree of being fake. Sometimes there's an element of authenticity about them, but most of them are mostly fake. Sign up for the video series, and you'll get to see exactly how I can work that out. And I've got a set of protocols which will expose whether your business has real authentic core values or not. So a lot of it is to do with observing behaviors. You can actually see, I can go into business and I can tell if they've got a bunch of values they've put up there. Quite often some of them aren't actually values. That's another thing. As I go through the video series, I talk a lot about axiology, which is a study of values. I've been immersed in that for 20 years and how you apply that to business, as well as teleology or teleology, which is the study of purpose. And the principles of teleology and axiology are often compromised by so many businesses in the way that they say, this is our vision, this is our values. It just doesn't stack up. So sign up for my video series. I'll explain all of that. I'll also go through my framework, which I've developed. So this is my greater purpose framework, and through the video series, I'll go through all of these steps that I take clients through to make sure that they are really a greater purpose business. And if they're not quite there, going through this process will totally transform. It transforms how people feel. It transforms everything about their business. So back to the story of how did I get here? What happened to me? Well, if we rewind the clock over 20 years ago, I was working in a media technology business. I'm going to give you the short version here. It was a $180 million project split into 3 phases over 8 years. And I was in phase 1. And let's put it this way, I was 15th reserve to be the project manager for this project. And the only reason I got to do it is because no one else wanted to manage it, because it had got to a point where many millions had been invested by the client, and it was in a point of failure. We had 9 major reds on it by the time I became project manager. The project manager previous to me, I was the project coordinator who'd seen 3 project managers come and go in just 3 months. And the last one, who was one of the best paid project managers on the surface of the earth at that point, being paid many thousands a day, and incredibly capable project manager. I learned so much from her, and she said to me the day she resigned, this is a hand grenade without a pin in this project. I'm out of here. And yeah, we had a bit of a laugh, and I said, I'm sorry to see you go, you've taught me so much. And then no other project manager would take it. They couldn't find anyone. So I was a junior project manager who was being the project coordinator in this project. They just said, well, can you just be the project manager for the time being? And I did probably the smartest thing I ever did in business. I asked them for a letter of authority. They wanted to, and then eventually they agreed and said, will it just be temporary project manager? I said, can you make me interim? And they agreed. So a letter went out. There was over 100 people around the world working on this project, and a letter of giving me recognition of being the project manager went out. And as soon as that letter went out, I said, right, now I'm going to do something I've wanted to do for so long, because all of my spare time I'd been immersed in studying leadership, what inspired people, mindset, and all these things. And now I could get away from all the technical stuff that was going on, because we had literally coders and astrophysicists and all kinds of technically brilliant engineers fighting with each other, because we had to integrate this digital library across the world with all kinds of different codecs and formats and editing suites and storing this uniform library. It was a massive challenge, and it was all technical stuff. And I wasn't technically good enough to understand half the problems anyway, so I almost didn't have a choice. And I decided to do something radically different. I got everyone together and I started saying, let's put all the technical stuff to one side for a moment. Why are we doing this? And quite often the initial answers would be they'd be technical or semi-technical, the answers. I said, no, from a human spirit and emotional point of view, why are we doing this? What difference are we making to the world? What impact are we going to have on people's lives by doing this? None of the people in this project have been asked that before. Some of them have been doing their jobs for 10, 20, 30 years. And it was a wonderful experience, because I saw people starting to think differently. And so then what we did with these 9 major reds, which looked like, we had a block on funding. It was I can do a whole 2-hour talk on how this project was turned around. But once we got clear on what the vision and the purpose of the project was, we created some pictures and some words, these walls. This was after having spoken, because everyone was engaged, everyone owned this. This wasn't ivory tower syndrome. I go through that in another video, where the leaders of the business just, they just tell everyone what the core values are. And that's why people aren't engaged. There's no ownership. After having lots of discussions with people, this is what we came up with: expanding the frontiers of life-enhancing media content. We are building a digital library that entertains and educates the world. Engineers were seeing things like that. They'd never seen stuff like this before. It was amazing the impact it had. So here are some other points about what we did. We created and communicated a purposeful, inspiring vision to all key stakeholders. And by stakeholders, it's a bigger group than what you think, and I've got another video on that. Our strategies and actions were guided and inspired by this purposeful vision, and we practiced visualization and applied the creative process. And the levels of creativity and innovation that came out of this project were extraordinary. So all the engineers and various other people got sent various pictures and purpose and vision statements, and that's what we would have. Any project that we had where we had engineers gathering, I'd put this picture up on the wall and the words, and whatever was going on, whatever technical disputes were going on, we would just point at our vision and say, is that helping us? And 7 times out of 8, whatever they were disputing, no, it's nothing to do. Okay, this, so we don't need to have that disagreement. 1 time out of 8, it will be, yeah, that's directly affecting, right, let's all roll our sleeves up together and work out a way of dealing. We had people who, because we had a block on project funds at the time, because there were 9 major reds, they said no more funding until we get it resolved. I'd literally got virtually no budget left to pay anyone. I had engineers who were so inspired by our vision, they were coming in their spare time and working for us, so they knew they couldn't do paid for work. It was on a scale you couldn't imagine. I mean, we had probably about 2,000 of hours of voluntary work on this project. This is unheard of. Like, I remember all the people who came and worked voluntary said they'd never done any voluntary work for an IT business before. It was just totally extraordinary. And as you can imagine, this changed my view of business, of life, of what was possible in business. And when this project was turned around, and to be, just thinking back on it was wow. The look on the faces of the board of directors when they were told, well, I was there and I said, we've got no major reds left. And they couldn't believe it. They were literally blown away. And they said, how did you do it? And when on one of the demos we did for one of a test lab we had, I had a picture on the wall like the one I just shown you, and a purpose statement, and I said, well, that's how we did it. And they were like, they just didn't get it. Their whole mindset was around, it has to be around performance, profit, efficiency, all the usual stuff, motivation only business, which is fine. That's part of life, is you have to have some motivation. But they'd never tapped into this human energy which comes from within, inspiration, spiritu, the spirit within, enthusiasm, the God within. It's ancient Greek, isn't it? So this is the energy, the life force that you tap into. And then what happens is, when you get clear on that, you're clear on your core values, you've got much clearer priorities. You know what to focus on and what to not, in a way that's so powerful. So after I delivered this project, they literally gave me the keys to the kingdom. They said, you can manage any project you want, go anywhere you want in the world, manage any project, because as far as they were concerned, I was the greatest project manager ever. Do you know what? I didn't feel like it, because I felt completely out of my depth on so many technical areas, and I thought, well, it was my team that did it. All I did was ask a few questions and point them in the right direction, and and then I thought, there weren't any other projects like this going on in the business. I thought, I'm going to be back into I want to teach people this. I want to have impact, because I can understand how it works now. And I went on an incredible journey. So if we go back, I left 2006, end of 2006 I left, and I met my mentor, Dr. John Demartini, who's the world's leading authority in axiology, the study of values, because I knew I needed to go down that route. The other thing I did is I got in touch with a company called Zappos, who have taught me so much about values in business. They're probably the greatest values-led business I've ever encountered, and I've researched the world for this. So they started from, they were in an attic, converted attic room, 5 of them in an attic office, and they sat down and mapped out their 10 core values, and one of them was their greater purpose, and they pretty much stuck to those core values. And I saw them from 2000 have unbelievable growth. In 2009 they were bought by Amazon for $1.9 billion. This is from a small startup, $1.2 billion, and everything about that business was incredible. It's a greater purpose business. We can think, obviously it's a slightly different business now because Amazon bought it, although they gave it autonomy. There's all kinds of discussions that we could have on that, but this was what I learned from them, and I extrapolated from the best. I learned from the very, very best people about how values worked, what purpose was. I really immersed myself in teleology, or teleology as you can also pronounce it, and try to kind of say how can you become a great, if you're not already a greater purpose business, how can you become one? And a lot of businesses, what happens is they start off as greater purpose businesses, but they don't understand why. And so because they don't understand why it's working and it's doing so well, and then they hit hard times, quite often it's because they forgot the values that got them where they were. And so I cover that in other videos as well. This is something I call the guiding star for a greater purpose business. And you'll see right at the center of the core values, and the purpose is obviously where it's pointing north. And then you've got these other elements, which are the vision of the business, the goals of the business, and the profits, all equally important. And then if we look here, this is a motivation only business, which is what most businesses are or become without realizing it, where their default purpose is profit. They don't have a greater purpose that sits above that. So profit becomes by default their purpose, which again is fine. I'm a big fan of making a profit. And equally, the profits equals the purpose on the other side of the star. And then you have this performance-based vision and this profit-focused goals. Okay, and in the middle, you'll have false core values. They will not be authentic core values. They'll be core values that are written with profit in mind, not with purpose. So when you have greater purpose in mind, at the top, that comes from authentic core values in the middle. So that's really important. All the work I do is about really understanding the authentic core values, and everything flows from that, including greater profits. Again, SpaceX is a great example. Greater purpose, greater profits. Inspiring visions and dreams, clear inspiring goals. I hope you got great value out of this video. Excuse the pun. There'll be other videos in the series. If you sign up, you'll get videos that you won't even find online that I'll share with you, which will give you big insights around what a greater purpose business is and how to go about ensuring that you are one. That part of my greater purpose, which sits in front of me every day on my wall here, is to help the business world to live from greater purpose. That's really my big purpose. So I've got a framework that will help people to do that. I'm going to be sharing that through this video series. I'm going to share case studies with you of a whole variety of real businesses, not just people putting rockets in space, everyday businesses that have a greater purpose, and as a result of that are more inspired, more fulfilled, clearer about their priorities, more enthusiastic, have very low levels of staff turnover, low levels of staff sickness, and attract the right people to work for them, attract the customers that most appreciate them, and have incredible, exponentially high levels of creativity and innovation. All of those things. So please, if you are interested, sign up for this series, share it. There's only one of me, so I can only work with a limited number of people. I just want this work to get out there. If you go to this homepage here, there'll be a sign up form, so you can receive all the videos in a sequence as well, because there's a preferred sequence to see them in, and there's exercise bonus PDFs. You'll also get access to my book of the month, which I've been doing for 11 years now, where I say great leaders are great readers. So I'll share with you my book of the month and a review on it. So please share this opportunity with other people you think it might resonate with, and I look forward to speaking with you in another video.